You know, when you hear a score to Battlefield, and there's tens upon tens upon tens of millions of plays on Spotify, and it's essentially a classical music score, it's not classical music to gamers. It becomes the music of their life. It becomes lifestyle. It's kind of like what the score to Star Wars did to people in the 70s and the 80s. It's not John Williams meets Stravinsky. It's a part of your own identity. So that's how you get to 90 million streams on Spotify in a classical score.
That was a clip from our guest of the show today, Steve Schnur. He's the worldwide executive and president of music at one of the largest gaming companies in the world, Electronic Arts. For those of you who are new to the show, my name is Alexa Ray, and next to me is my awesome Aussie co-host, Will Barton. In this episode, we chat with Steve about his impressive career journey, how songs are placed in video games, and so much more. We were thrilled to have the chance to interview Steve, and we are just super excited to share this episode with you. So with that being said, welcome to Killer Influence, Steve.
Thank you. I love the name Killer Influence. It makes me want to sing the Jaws theme. It just feels like dun, 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 Killer Influence. So thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here, and I'm happy to see you guys.
Well, we're excited to have you, and we just have a few questions that we'd like to start off with.
Fire away.
So, Steve, obviously you've had quite a long life, and we'd love to start from the very beginning, where you grew up and how you got the passion for music and games.
I grew up in Jersey. No, I'm not related to Tony Soprano, but I still grew up in the same state. Boy, that would work with Killer Influence, right? Tony Soprano. See the theme here that's going on?
Love
it. Grew up in Jersey. Ended up going back and forth between New York a lot. Divorce brat and all that sort of stuff. Spent a lot of time when I was 7, 8, 9 years old on buses by myself going from Jersey into New York City to study orchestration and composition at Carnegie Hall. Really, if you would ask me at 7, 8, 9, 10 years old what I wanted to do, I would have told you I want to be a composer. I don't even think I realized what that meant back then, but I had a dream nonetheless. And then when I was about 11 or 12 years old, I got asked by a bunch of guys who were 17, give or take a year, to be in a band where there was no more classical instrumentation. It was all Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and I was in. I mean, it was like I was taken over by the devil, seriously. It's like I was all in the second I started seeing, what that meant. And so that was my childhood in a couple sentences or less.
How did your family feel about that?
Which part? The rock and roll part?
Yeah, switching from... I think
they encouraged it. Listen, I think they encouraged it. My dad, he was amazing. He actually built my band that we had, this whole lighting rig, and then we converted the entire bottom floor, the basement of our house, soundproofed it, which probably still shook the living hell out of the house, but it was amazing. More muffled. And all we knew back then, it's kind of like the Spinal Tap thing, turn it up to 11. We did that. And I think our proudest moment in my high school band, I was in junior high school, they were in high school, was when we played in the town park, and a friend of mine drove from 2 miles away on his bike and said, "Whoa, I can even hear you from my house." And I thought that was the ultimate compliment, Wow. It wasn't how good we were, it was how loud we were.
That's amazing.
What the heck? What a weird memory to have, but it was all about, turn it up to 11.
Did you have any success with that high school band?
Heck no.
What was your name?
I think it was Omega. What a bad 70s rock and roll band, Omega, right? We were pretty much crap, I think. But okay, we were what we were. A couple of the guys went on, I think, to be in the Good Rats or something like that. They went beyond Jersey. But I didn't. I went ended up going to NYU and studying music business and technology. And I got an internship. I always find this to be a fun sort of thing because I got there a day too late for all of those who might still be in university when all the good internships were gone, all the record companies and the publishing companies. That's what you wanted at the School of Music and music business. And the only thing left was this thing no one had ever heard of called MTV. So I took it. And oh my God, was it the right thing? Because within one day I was sitting in the programming meetings and they were a bunch of, older people in their 40s deciding whether they should play more Huey Lewis or something else. And I was like, are you out of your mind? Why are we not playing The Cure? Why are we not playing Mötley Crüe? And they would look at me and go, who? And, I was able to be in a very influential killer influence, a very influential place at a very young age, not realizing that what I was doing was because of my opinion, and I have a tendency to admit that I'm opinionated when it comes to music, I was eventually going to make a living out of that. But so yeah, it was the right place at the right time, and I worked there as an intern for the head of programming for quite some time, and then I got recruited, I'm using air quotes right now, but recruited, for lack of a better term, into Elektra Records because I had worked so hard at MTV supporting bands like Mötley Crüe and on the alternative side at the time, Howard Jones and The Cure, and these were all bands that were on Elektra. So they asked me to come work for them.
Wow.
Just being an intern, how did you put your foot down and, talk to the people above you, and you said, like, this is what I want to do and this is what I want to hear?
Yeah, it's a great question and I appreciate the fact that you're bringing up the internship. So it's so critical. And I did back then we didn't get paid for internships. So I worked almost a year and a half, and my dad used to call me and go, I think they're really taking advantage of you. And I'd be like, no, you got to trust me on this one. I put my foot down with humor. I mean, I wasn't mean. I wasn't obnoxious, hopefully, I would just kind of laugh it through and remind them that I was young and they were old.
Love that.
I'm sorry, it was the truth. I was 20, and what they were listening to, Huey Lewis, I'm sorry to pick on Huey Lewis today, but that didn't matter to me. You know what I mean? That type of music didn't matter to me. What mattered to me was stuff that bothered my parents. And, listen, that still matters to this day. I always said that my goal when I joined EA 18 years ago was I wanted some kid to be up in his room playing his Xbox or PlayStation, his parent, on the story below to scream up, upstairs saying, turn the damn game down. I believe in that. I believe that music needs to be your own. It can't be something that you necessarily share with your parents. It needs to be something that separates you from your parents. It's defiant. Whether it's hip hop, it's rock and roll, whatever the case may be, it has a sense of oneself to it. Something that represents who I am and not who my parent is.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm just thinking of the Twisted Sister video where they get angry at the kid because he's playing loud music and all the rest. But
right.
My dad took my Eminem CD and snapped it in half right in front of me because of all the bad words.
Really?
Yes.
That sounds very Elvis-like.
Yeah,
See, that stuff never ends.
Yeah.
And now parents always still say, I don't understand hip-hop. How can you listen to that stuff? There's a reason why I can listen to it, because it speaks to me. Mm-hmm. It doesn't speak to you. Lyrically, it's what rock and roll used to be. It's defiant. It speaks about uprising. It speaks about things that are important to younger people that parents, to quote Will Smith, just don't understand. We don't have to pay a license because I just quoted that lyric, do we?
I don't think
good.
so.
That's all right.
Good.
Maybe one day.
Exactly.
So I guess your parents were super supportive.
They were.
Growing up as well, and really encouraged you to feel that creative side of what you're doing.
I mean, I got to tell you something. They were very supportive. It was when I was 17 that my grandmother, God rest her soul, pulled me aside and said to me, this music hobby, quote, of yours is really nice. But in our family, we really only have three choices. You could be a doctor, you could be a lawyer, or, quote, God forbid, you could be a dentist. My dad was a dentist. I took that with a little bit of, so I actually started at USC, then transferred to NYU, but I went to the music business school, but lied and told them that I was going to pre-law. Because I wasn't going on the course that they had expected me to.
To your parents and your grandparents?
Correct.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, because I believe that if you're somebody, if you're a musician and you have the gift of music, or probably the gift of acting or anything creative, you don't have a choice. You will be miserable the rest of your life unless you pursue what you love. I didn't have a choice whether to be a dentist or a musician. It's just not even on the same. It's just impossible. You're a musician. It's who you are. It's what you were born to be, whether you're religious or not. God put you on this planet, and feeds the music through you and you feel it. You know, it's emotional to you and you have to pursue it. And I never had a regret. You know, could have had a little more of a comfortable life at times, probably, if I was a surgeon or something like that, but I don't regret it. I would say that to anybody out there who's, you know, I taught a course at Belmont once, and at Belmont, the first question was, everybody put up their hand if they have parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, aunts, uncles who told them they were crazy for pursuing a job or profession in the music business, and every hand goes up. And it's those that believe in themselves and believe in the passion and the of music that's within them. Those are the ones that ultimately become successful in the music business or as music performers. So I don't have regrets, but yes, I did lie. Yes, I did tell a lie.
Interesting. And the question I had about college, like obviously New York University back then with the music business, I'm sure there was sort of such a smaller music business of where you work in the recording industry, you work in publishing. Now you have obviously, you know, gaming industry for music. You've got all these other avenues. How do you think someone could navigate that now in college for Belmont? Or
I think it's a great question. And I think, you know, when I did teach a course at Belmont for years, it was called The Future of Music. And we would create what the future in our minds would look like, rather than stick to the present saying, okay, well, will I work at a record label or will I work at Spotify, whatever the case may be. We imagined where technology was bringing us, musically speaking, and we would build marketing plans and ideas and creative ideas towards that. So this is about 5-10 years ago, we talked about the idea of music supervision. Everybody wants to be a music supervisor, but nobody really knows what it means. They think, well, I know music, therefore I can pick songs. That's not what it means. It's wonderful to have that talent, but you know, you really need to understand licensing, and you need to understand culture and pushing the envelope on culture, et cetera, et cetera. Matching film to picture to music is a challenge, and it's a skill set. But what does a music supervisor mean in the future? And we talked about that. It just doesn't necessarily mean film. Certainly it means video games now. It could also mean brands. It can mean, you know, the Super Bowl. It can mean, you know, so many things that need music and need proper, intelligent, educated music supervision. So, I think and this is what I told the students back then, for all the parents and aunts and uncles that told them they were crazy for trying to go in the music business, this is the greatest time to go in the music business. Yep. There's more opportunities than ever before. They're just not the same narrow-minded opportunities as there used to be. I think you can go in the music business and work for Pepsi. You know, you can go in the music business and work for the NFL, or you can work for Epic Records. So it's a wonderful time to be in it. And I hope that answers the question, but I get very, very enthusiastic about people saying they want to pursue their career in music, because it just doesn't mean when I entered it, it meant I worked for a record company, as you said. And I moved from one record company to the next. I worked for Elektra. I worked for Chrysalis. I went back to Elektra. Thank you, Metallica. I worked for Arista. I worked for Capitol Records. And I always have said, and I mean this with lots of respect to my friends in the record business, it took my leaving the record business to finally get into the music business.
Wow. That's awesome.
Mic drop. I totally agree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the truth for me personally, because once I did music supervision for films. And then I got offered a gig at EA, and I didn't even know what it was at first. I didn't understand it. I really wasn't a gamer. I had played Nintendo 64 games when I was trying to impress bands that were on the road, and I was trying to sign them to Capitol Records. You know, I played Wave Runner just terribly, but I learned to play it because that's what half the bands were playing in the 90s. But you know, once I went up to our lead studios, at least in our main studio was then based in Vancouver, I couldn't believe what I saw. I just saw buildings of people excited, young people excited, just energy. I saw the future, and it wasn't on a record label. It was in a video game, and it was the production and the marketing and the thinking and the risk. taken with it. And now, and that was 2001, 2002. Can you imagine, how far it's come since then? I mean, Battlefield 1, Battlefield 5, we were just talking about before this, it's unreal. The blur between film and interactive, media is just, you're playing something real now.
Also want to explain in layman's terms what electronic arts is for the people that might not potentially know what electronic arts is.
Yeah. Electronic arts, most people at the very least know EA or EA Sports.
Yep.
Electronic Arts is the biggest video game company in the world. Our franchises are diverse and incredible and run from EA Sports, Madden, NFL football, FIFA, which is the biggest sports game in the world, NHL, UFC, NBA Live, etc. They run to many filmic, for lack of a better term, types of games, Battlefield, The Sims, which I believe is probably the most successful game of all time. Wow. I think it's well over 300 million units, something like that, just celebrating its 20th anniversary. Mass Effect, Dragon Age, Need for Speed, the list goes on and on and on. So it is bigger, the game industry is bigger than the music and the film industry combined. It's projected to be, I believe, don't hold me to specifically to the single digit number, but it's projected to be about $150+ billion business. And I don't believe that there are many people under the age of, when I say X, it used to be I was able to say under the age of 25, but now so many people over the decades have grown up with games. But I find it hard to believe that anybody under the age of, let's say, 25, 35 hasn't played a video game. Most, it becomes their main form of entertainment. Interactive entertainment is incredible. To be able to not rely on just a story that's being told to you, but be able to participate in that story, to be the first person, but you're sitting on the couch, and to see the interactive elements and emotion that comes with it is pretty stunning. To be able to, play, we're sitting in Nashville, so to be able to, jump in and play for the Titans, or be able to play for Liverpool, or be able to jump back to World War I and emotionally experience, the horror of the world's, bloodiest war to date, is pretty incredible. So as much as it's fun, it becomes a history lesson. It becomes a dream. Interactive entertainment is certainly the most driving form of entertainment there is today.
And what is your role in all of that?
I am the head of music. I'm the head of music for Electronic Arts. So I always say that I'm responsible for every single note in every single game and also the marketing of. So, for instance, whether it's the score of Battlefield or the score of The Sims, whether it's the songs and the song selection that you hear in FIFA or Madden football, whether it's the trailers you hear in advance, whether it is the appearances you see at the EA Sports Bowl just before the Super Bowl or the draft for the NFL, no matter what it is, if it involves music, whether it's live, whether it's trailers, whether it's in-game, whether it's compositional, whether it's licensed, I'm ultimately responsible for that. We look at what we do, musically speaking, as being a driver for culture. For years ago when I started, we said we would like to represent culture. Now I boldly say we've become culture. I believe that most gamers can happily, eagerly, and enthusiastically reflect on the songs that they've discovered and heard for the first time in FIFA. They can usually say, oh, NHL 2007 X, or I learned about Kasabian through FIFA X, or I learned about Kings of Leon through FIFA, whatever the case may be. It becomes a point of discovery. And I think, frankly, also when it comes to scores, unlike film, when you hear a score to Battlefield, and there's tens upon tens upon tens of millions of plays on Spotify, and it's essentially a classical music score. It's not classical music to gamers. It becomes the music of their life. It becomes lifestyle. It's kind of like what the score to Star Wars did to people in the 70s and the 80s. It's not John Williams meets Stravinsky. It's a part of your own identity. So that's how you get to 90 million streams on Spotify and a classical score. I would love to find any film score. Now, I'm not talking about licensed music in films, but any film score that has that level of reach, where it becomes that personal to a younger person. You can define what younger is, whether it means 20 or 40. It's been next generation for a couple generations now.
Yeah, and I guess following on from that, with a film score, you've got a continuous score that goes throughout the whole film. There's one direction. You sort of going through the film, whether it's an hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. Mm-hmm. Whereas a game, there's so many different facets. You've got the score that then stems off to different parts of what the character is doing within the game. Can you explain that a little bit further?
It's the most fantastic thing for a composer to be able to score to interactive media, otherwise known as games in this case. A film, you are scoring to picture. You're watching the pictures. The film has been shot. They're showing you, on the stage, you do a spotting session. So you're writing to what's happening on the screen. Tom Cruise is running away from the bad guy. You need to write the piece that helps that emotionally connect to you who's sitting in the theater. The difference is that in a game, there's no Tom Cruise on the screen. There's millions of first-person people, I don't know if that's a proper term, sitting on the couch. And you are writing their emotional experience, not tied to picture. Because one person can go left, one person can go right, one person can go straight, one person can go backwards, and each comes with its own score. Because the score's ultimate responsibility is to affect and to guide and to help and lift the emotional interaction and response that's going on. I mean, the score is what's going to make you cry. It's what is going to make you scared. It's going to what makes you run faster. Whatever the case may be, that's the responsibility of a proper score, to be able to have that emotional participation. So how do you do it with a million possibilities? And so you're not creating a linear piece of music. You're creating a piece of music that stems to other pieces of music. And through technology, you can write, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and all of a sudden, if your character goes this way, then it has to sort of trail off, da-da-da-da-da-da. But if your character is going the other way, then it has to sort of connect there. Composers love it. And I'm not just talking about new composers studying at universities. I'm talking about Hans Zimmer. I'm talking about Michael Giacchino. I'm talking about John Debney. I'm talking about the list of the greatest composers in the world. Once they start to write and record for games, all of the tethers are off and they feel freed, musically speaking. And that's why we're able to work with the level of people we have, which are Academy Award-winning, globally, renowned composers, because they all are amazed by the different approach to writing with no, like I said, tether to picture. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. That's pretty incredible. Just the facet of how many different options. It's almost like a choose-your-own-adventure thing.
It is. Well, listen, a film score can have 40 minutes for a romantic comedy. It can have 30, 40. An action film, maybe it goes to 50, 60, depending on the film. I mean, you have to understand, we just released Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, and the score, which is winning every award, the Society of Composers and Lyricists Award, where, Hildur won for The Joker, and Thomas Newman won Lifetime Achievement, and Gordy Hobb and Stephen Barton won for Best Game Score. So you're on a whole different level of worldwide, just recognition. And we wrote and recorded 380 minutes of score.
Wow.
That took us 2 to 3 months just to record, 2 years to write. So there's no 40 minutes, Julia Roberts falls in love with the guy and then breaks up, la-da-da-da-da. You're talking intense intense amounts of interactive pieces of music. I will hire a composer 2 to 3 years in advance. Most film composers work 6 to 8 weeks once a picture is shot, and then they're on to the next. So it's a whole different level of immersive participation in production.
So what's the process from the start to finish of a game, and where does the music come in?
Well, the process of music starts before production begins. I am usually working with the creative directors who are still internally pitching to green light a game to help them establish the tone. What is the tone of the game? What's the tone of the characters? What are we trying to say musically? What does the sound design sound like? How does it differentiate from anything else in the world, hopefully? And from there, we begin sort of a casting element. We look at characters. We hypothetically and fictionally decide what that character might be listening to, even though you as a gamer will never hear it. We're trying to define the personality musically, and that helps them sort of define the story and define where the characters go. We'll bring in a composer, sometimes 2 years in advance, and that composer will usually help us further define. We'll look at themes, we'll look at scenes, and really try to establish what the edge, musically speaking, is going to be, how this is going to differentiate itself, how we're going to tell the story, musically speaking. So it goes on for 2+ years. Now, there are certain things like FIFA and Madden, which are franchises. We already know the tone, so how do we grow it? How do we change it? And we do that as well. That takes a little less time, but I'll start working on Madden NFL. If it ships in August, the day it ships, I start working on the next year. Actually, sometimes I'm working on 2 years in advance if we have new sort of parts of it that we want to, Volta, which was a part of FIFA this last year in FIFA 20, we started working on that well in advance. And when we had Journey and we had Long Shot and FIFA and Madden, those were the story modes. Those were 2 to 3 year projects. But for the most part, we try to sort of imagine and look at the information, the research on what people are listening to, what gamers are listening to, what's important to them, and we'll sort of guide ourselves. There's a reason why Madden is all hip-hop now. There were many, many years when I would have country and I would have rock and alternative electronic and figure, we need to give music to everyone. And the truth is, that's not what gamers want. Gamers believe the tone of football to this day, the sound of football, is in fact, hip hop. And now we work with the NFL. And I'm sorry if I'm taking this answer too far, but the NFL works with us because we're helping them establish what the tone of the game itself is going to be in the future. There's a reason why half those songs last year at Nissan Stadium for the Titans were played. They came from the Madden soundtrack. Denzel Curry was being played because of the Madden soundtrack. And I'm not talking just about before game. I'm talking about in game. We provide clips of the songs, 5, 10, 15-second clips of the songs that are included in Madden, and they play them when, there's a fumble or whatever the case may be. Those songs come out. That's how they admit, rightly so, they're going to attract the next generation of football fans. Musically, Madden sets the tone for the sport. So it's different for all games. Filmic, years. Sports, 1 year. But we're always thinking ahead. We're never, anything we've done before, I throw out. We have to reinvent ourselves and grow. I think gamers expect that. I never want to give them what they've heard before.
What is your process for finding original music? Are people coming to you? Do you have like a song pitching team? How does that process happen?
Yeah, I have an amazing team, a small team, but an amazing team of music supervisors. And our job is to collectively go out and scan the world, literally, on not just next generation artists, but genres in general. We need to be able to predict and know if, where hip hop is growing, where electronic is growing, where rock is growing or not. I like to set trends. I'm not for instance, rock and roll might be dying on paper, so to speak, but we use our NHL franchise to try to turn people on to the next generation of rock artists. So we really pay attention, not just what's going on in the U.S. or the U.K. We pay attention what's going on in Italy and Japan and Brazil and Australia and everywhere else in the world, because the games, we don't localize the music in games. I want somebody in Melbourne, Australia to be able to hear a band from Italy for the first time. The days of borders, musically speaking, are gone. We don't believe in sort of, containing that. I want everybody around the world to be able to turn on, to be able to be turned on to music from anywhere and everywhere. And I can't think of a better real estate than to do that with. I mean,
I love that.
The question that I had about the different locations of where you're playing the game, say if you're in Ghana, are you still getting the same music that you would across the board internationally in Ghana, or is it Ghanaian music that's being played in the games?
You're getting the same music.
Okay.
So I think it's important.
That's awesome.
And we've taken music from Ghana and put that in FIFA in the past, so everybody in the world can hear what music from Ghana sounds like, and vice versa. This story goes back maybe 10, 15 years, but there was a Brazilian artist named Trebalistas. Sorry if I've mispronounced that, but great song. And we put it in FIFA, and next thing you know, they got picked up by EMI, I think, in the UK, and they had a #1 song across Europe. Wow. So I want music to be able to travel. So, yeah, there's no localization whatsoever. I don't want that. I want people to have no borders and be able to hear great music from all around the world. First of all, when it comes to FIFA, because I'm a football, meaning soccer fanatic, football is global. So the music accompanying it should be global. We know what soccer/football sounds like in Brazil. We know what soccer sounds like in Liverpool and other places. But at the end of the day, that's still global. There's a sound. And there's many, many, many times, and I reemphasize that, that somebody who's a gamer will hear a song that has never been in FIFA, and they go, oh, that's a FIFA song. Because there's a sound, and the sound travels, and it's music from all parts of the world, but it has enthusiasm, and it's rhythmic, and it makes you feel good, and it makes you feel competitive, and there's a sound, and we've helped to define that. So the answer to your question is no. I never want to contain the music to a geographical location.
So I guess the next part of this would be to talk more about people who are interested in the music industry in general, but maybe more specifically gaming, music sync, song plugging, A&R, anything like that is more specific roles within the music industry. How would you navigate that? And I guess, what's the first step in doing that?
I think the first step, as we mentioned earlier, is internships. I think that's critical. I think there's so many great internships available now in the gaming industry and the music industry as well. I can tell you that out of the staff that works for me, I'm about to hire this summer my intern from the last 2 years, and he'll be coming in as our head of production, basically, for all the songs and the sim songs and stuff we do. My head of music marketing was an intern for me. My former marketing person was an intern from USC. I believe that still is the best way to get your foot in the door. I believe that you don't have to just think about the companies that you know about. It's one thing if you want to get in the gaming industry to know about EA or Rockstar or Activision, but there's so many developers out there. And I think you just do your research by looking at how many developers there are, and there's Bungie and there's others, but there's also smaller developers out there, and they need people and they need interns, and it's a way in the door because many of those companies get, they get bought. And all of a sudden they become a part of EA and Activision and things like that. So I think my personal opinion, there's a lot more opportunity in internships probably in gaming than there probably even is in music. Because there's so many developers and they're so geographically, they're just everywhere in the world. You don't have to be in LA or New York. You can be in Edmonton. You can be in Montreal. You can be 3 hours north of London. You can be in northern Scotland. You can be Lord knows how many cities or towns across Australia.
Yeah.
Or you can be in Ghana. Whatever the case may be, there are game developers everywhere, whether they're mobile game developers, console game developers, whatever the case may be. So I think you need to do some research there, and you need to get your foot in the door. And then the smaller the developer, to me, the more opportunity there is. If you're working at a small developer and you want to all of a sudden suggest that you write music, they might say yes. So that's what I would suggest.
Okay, and that's an amazing answer. And thinking about musicians as well that want to get into games, or at least how you started with at Carnegie Hall and at the age of 7 or whatever. Starting to learn about compositions and stuff like that.
Well, you're talking about musicians or composers? I think you're talking about composers.
Yeah,
right now.
Composers.
So let's talk about composers, and let's talk about composers who want to write for games, because I have remember I started this by saying how opinionated I am. Here's where I go. You hear the term video game composer, and some people consider themselves video game composers. I strongly reject that. I believe a great composer is a great composer. A crappy composer is a crappy composer, and a good composer, a great composer should be able to write music for television, film, games, commercials, whatever the case may be. And you should practice your craft towards any of those mediums. So many people think that the idea of being a game composer means that you're technologically savvy. Well, you know what? That's okay. I would much rather hire a great composer who's less technologically savvy, and I can match them internally with an incredible tech engineer to work with them on how to write interactively, than to hire somebody who is technically, the technological equivalent of Einstein, but can't write a great melody. I think great composers need to study at the greatest schools, composition, understand, how to write great melodies, understand how to orchestrate properly, and then go work in various mediums. There is a lot of people out there who consider themselves game composers, and I just don't buy that. I've never hired someone because they're, I'm a game composer. What does that mean? So I can tell you that a lot of the work for composers exists primarily in Los Angeles. That's where the agents are. That's pretty much where most of them sit. There are exceptions, of course. There's people in Nashville. There's people in North Carolina. There's certainly people in Europe and Australia and others. Matter of fact, the guy who does trailers for us for Star Wars is in Australia.
Wow.
And we record it in Nashville. But most of the recording that's happening right now is happening in Nashville. And so the musicians, and that's why I asked you if you were talking about composers or musicians, the musicians themselves that are playing on Call of Duty, Fortnite, Madden, FIFA, Battlefield, Star Wars, the musicians that are playing on Netflix, Lost in Space, Fargo, the musicians that played on Harriet, the film that got nominated for an Academy Award recently, et cetera, that's all being recorded in Nashville, Tennessee. So the composers will come in from Los Angeles or elsewhere, but all the recordings themselves are happening here. Nashville has become, believe it or not, over the last 6 or 7 years, a top 3 recording destination for film, television, and games. They weren't even on the map 7 years ago. There were years when Seattle poked their toe in, and still, Eastern Europe, everybody was running to Bratislava and to Prague. But the truth is, Nashville now is busier than pretty much anywhere in the world, with the exception of maybe London, when it comes to recording score for all visual media. So I'd say if you're a musician and you want to work and play on scores, Nashville should pretty much be the play. You have no idea how many LA musicians reach out to me almost every day asking if it's time for them to move to Nashville, because the work is drying up a little bit, sadly, in Los Angeles, and it's exploding here to the point where the studio here is, you can't even get a date months and months in advance. London, the same, by the way. London books out 1 or 2 years in advance. I mean, to get a date at Abbey Road or Air, you got to really plan well. But the composer community sits for the most part in Los Angeles. The good news is that most, if not all, of the composer community right now in the last couple of years has finally recognized that the place to record is Nashville. And so you have, major films, major television shows, half the stuff, Outlander on, I don't know what channel they're on, but everybody buzzes about that show called Outlander. It's all recorded here. So that's something to keep in mind.
That's very interesting, and I feel like a lot of people listening are going to be very excited to hear that.
Yeah. Well, Nashville has this whole business going here, and what's going to be the game changer, and yes, you heard it here first, what's going to be the game changer is when a world-class, massive sound scoring stage is established here. And I can tell you right now that we're going to be breaking ground on May 1st. So within a year, we will have a studio bigger than Abbey Road, bigger than the Streisand stage in Los Angeles. It'll be state-of-the-art, world-class. And between that and Ocean Way, which is on Music Row, game over at that point, no pun intended. The people behind it, which I can't talk about yet, it's going to bring the world to want to record here, and I guarantee that. So I believe in the next 2 years, sadly, Los Angeles will fall to third place, and London and Nashville will be the 2 places in the world to record all sorts of visual media, including post-production. If you're editing or mixing or whatever's in post for you, if you're interested in that, I believe this would be the place to go to for that in the future.
I'm never going to be able to buy a house here.
No, that's why I'm telling you this now. And I said we're 2 years away. You might want to do it now.
Oh my goodness!
The musician, well, the beauty of Nashville, amongst many things, and as you know, I'm a massive fan. Megan Barry used to joke with me that I was the real mayor when she was mayor. But the beauty is that a class of musicians. All classes of musicians can actually come here, practice and work on their craft and afford to live here. You can be a musician. You can live here. You can play 6 days a week at Ocean Way or at this future studio. You can play on some of the greatest scores in the world, make a living doing what you love, and be able to buy a house. Now I sound like I'm in the real estate business or the political business, but the truth is this is the greatest place in the world, in my and many people's opinion, to be if you're a creative person in any way, shape, or form. It's very hard to live in Los Angeles or New York or London. It's really expensive. And yet if the work is coming here, which it is now more and more and more, particularly the majority of work is coming here, I still think you'll be able to afford a house as a cellist. Mm-hmm. So to speak.
Well, that means a lot because you've traveled so much. So for you to say that Nashville's one of the best places, it's really great.
I can tell you I think it's the best place. I mean, I do travel every single week. I'm in Los Angeles almost every week. I'm in Sweden every 2 months. I'm in London 9 times last year in London and other places around the world, but this is still home. Listen, I work in L.A., but I live in Nashville. We record here. Pretty much everything I mentioned before is recorded here. But it's wonderful to be in a community of creative people, of musicians. There's no hierarchy. It's not like LA where, which lives up to all of its cliches. It's a very humble place filled with incredible musicianship and musicians and the greatest players in the world. And I think we're going to ensure that the film, television, and video game recording industry finally settles here and we become the number one place. I'm not saying we're going to put London out of business. And by the way, that's never been my intention. We're building a partnership with London, and they've been great, and they recognize it as well. The big studios there recognize it, that we really collectively want these 2 cities to be the premier destination for recording.
Yeah, I feel like Nashville, I tell people Nashville is about 10 years behind Austin for maybe the tech side of things, but obviously music is a huge part of it. But I'd love to hear just quickly your thoughts on Nashville's changing in the film or music industry or gaming industry at least. over the past however many years you've worked here?
Well, listen, there's no major developers in Tennessee yet. I think there's some smaller developers in Tennessee when it comes to game studios. I think that's going to change over time. I think, with bigger companies like Amazon and others putting such a huge footprint in this city, I think you're right. Technologically speaking, we're behind. But I think people are starting to recognize that the creative talent is here. I think the new studio that I alluded to before is going to be really focused on post-production of film, television, and games. Less interested in actual production itself, even though that will be a part of it. But post-production, mixing, live service, audio implementation, whatever the case may be, I think that is going to be critical to establishing a part of Nashville's future. And listen, as the game industry moves towards live services and to cloud gaming, live services and cloud gaming is going to require 24/7 implementation. Long gone are the days when you make a game and you ship it and then you show up a year later to continue it. It's 24/7 now, and I'm hoping and I feel pretty good about the fact that Nashville and Tennessee in general is going to be a part of that future.
So now that we're talking so much about the future, what sort of new projects are you working on that you're most excited about?
Well, a few I can't talk to you about yet, although I'd love to, but you can all take guesses, and chances are you're right. But the one thing you can always count on is the fact that, Madden and FIFA and The Sims, these are things that I'm working on every single day.
Have you seen a decrease in those games?
No,
at all?
Increase.
Biggest
year of all time for FIFA 20.
Wow.
Madden football increase last year. Where there's a decrease sometimes is the sport itself, never with FIFA or soccer. But, there's a decrease in certain things when it comes to the NFL, and they've got their challenges ahead, and we're partners with them. And, they finally sort of came around to figuring out what they need to get done.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, by the way, their head of marketing for the NFL, guess where he worked before? Activision.
No way.
They hired a guy to run marketing for the NFL from a game company. So it shows you how smart, these companies are, that they're seeing the future of entertainment comes from an untypical source. But no, I don't see a decrease in that at all.
The only reason I ask that is because people are crazy about being behind their phones, and so with Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and, just your day-to-day job and side hustles, I was just wondering if people are finding time to sit down and play those games, but I'm super excited to hear that it's only increasing.
Well, you have to remember also that games aren't just, on Xbox and PlayStation. Everything, when it comes to FUT and, football, FIFA Ultimate Team, and Madden, these things translate to your mobile phone. There's, I just nothing to do with EA, but I saw Strauss Zelnick on TV yesterday, who's the CEO. He came from the music business, came from BMG, my former boss, ironically, and now is the CEO of Take-Two. And he was talking about Grand Theft Auto Online is bigger than ever. And I won't quote his numbers, but it was pretty massive. So I think that as long as games continue to have the ability to be played anywhere and everywhere, and not just stick you on your couch, that you can take them with you. Cloud gaming is going to frankly change it all, because at the end of the day, you're going to not have any download time. Remember, we've moved from disk to download, waiting 7-8 hours to download a game. Now we're going to be instant. I'm sure there's going to be a Netflix type of environment where you can go on to a site or onto your smart TV and be able to visit the world of whatever gaming world you live in, sports, EA Sports, and you're going to be able to instantly play and play in a community around the world. So gaming is moving. Unlike the record business, gaming has never been scared of technology. Technology has actually created the evolution for gaming. They've embraced it. They've even created it. The record business for a long time, as you remember, was terrified of it. Ironically, also, the music business grew because of technology, but they always sort of fought off the next generation. Games don't do that. Games embrace it and they work towards it. We will shift to 180 just to move towards where technology is taking us, and more importantly, where gamers want to be. We listen. If gamers say they want to play games this way or that way, we'll shift everything towards that.
Even the piracy side of things, like the recording industry, obviously you can pirate music online or from a CD, whereas gaming, there's so many different technologies now that it's hard to even track where things are going.
It is hard, but the difference also, in addition to that, is in gaming, we actually encourage people to take visuals from The Sims and create their own music, or upload music and upload it to YouTube. We don't sue our customers, Not that the record business does that anymore, but that was a terrible move, And no, gaming believes that you should be able to, love the characters, love the stories, and be able to get imaginative with them. That's the world of The Sims, by the way. You're hands-on, and we don't interfere. We actually encourage.
Cool. Alexa was telling me a story about how you got a band to record the track in the language that they, and then that became a big success as well, right?
Well, you're talking about The Sims. Yeah, that happens all the time. The Sims, for those of you familiar with it, is there's a proprietary language within The Sims called Simlish. We actually have a guy who's full-time on staff who's a translator for Simlish, and it was a very bold idea that I had about, 12, 15 years ago, to see if we can get recording artists to re-sing their songs in Simlish, not in a half-ass way, to properly record great masters. And I put my toe in the water and called a friend of mine who at the time was signed to RCA, and she said, yeah, why not? That sounds fun. It was great. And then it got bolder and bolder. So eventually we've had everything from Katy Perry, Hot and Cold, to Lady Antebellum, Need You Now, to Depeche Mode, to the list goes on and on and on. I can't even. We have over 400 to 500 now artists that have we're in Nashville, so I'll talk country for a second. Luke Bryan, Martina McBride, you name it. And the masters sound phenomenal. Wow. And I guess all you have to do really is go to YouTube, because they're in the games themselves, and you go to a jukebox or a place in the game and you sort of, punch the genre you want to hear, and lo and behold, there's 11 Simlish Americana songs or whatever the case may be. But if you go to YouTube and you just search, Katy Perry Simlish, you'll hear Friday Night, or you'll hear Hot and Cold, or put in Pussycat Dolls, Don't You, or whatever the case may be. They're all up there, and it's become a thing now, a thing that most artists want to do. And I'm in the middle of one right now in Nashville, recording 5 artists that I can't talk about yet. And no, it's not country. The enthusiastic response is pretty overwhelming. I was so nervous to do it, 10, 15 years ago, because I didn't want to offend anybody. At the end of the day, every artist from, you name it, from, like I said, Lily Allen to whatever, they have laughed and had the best time doing it. And the guys, by the way, in Lady Antebellum, remember, these are recorded. Like Need You Now was, I think it was released in Simlish before it was released in English. And Dave and Hillary always tell me in Lady Antebellum that they get more requests still at every gig saying, sing it in Simlish, sing it in Simlish. So,
my goodness.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. So I think we probably do about 20 to 30 a year now. And after all these years, we have quite a catalog. It's pretty great.
That's incredible. And I was telling Alexa earlier, and you think about an average band that goes out and records in a studio, records an album or whatnot, and it takes them maybe 1 year to record one album. For you, I guess you're producing music for a huge number of games a year. It's almost like you're producing a number of albums every year.
Yeah, I should count. And thank you for noticing that, by the way, because I'm tired. No, I'm joking. I stopped counting. I mean, I produce Lord knows how many scores a year. I would venture to say at least 10. And full scores, not the albums you hear, which are up there on Spotify, but the actual game scores, which could be, as I mentioned before, hundreds and hundreds of minutes. I'm working on 5 right now at the same time. So Yeah, and that's not, we don't take that lightly. I mean, it takes, plus there's a casting element too, because aside from producing it, I have to go find who the right composer is. And that's not easy sometimes. You have to make the right match. But listen, guys in film and television, they have the same job in that regard. But yeah, that's probably the favorite part of my job, is going out there and casting and producing score. Because I want people to be able to, play Battlefield or The Sims or Star Wars, and I want them to feel it.
Are you ever not working?
No.
Never.
No, I don't play golf or any of those silly things that some people do. Please don't hate me if you're a golfer now and you're that. I don't do any of this stuff because
no vacation just for vacation.
Yeah, but I probably work a little bit on those. Sometimes I usually, like last summer, I went on vacation for 3 days in between scoring Star Wars at Abbey Road. So I took 3 days in between. Nice. 3 days we were off. I know a bunch of the guys, the composers, went up to Scotland to see the Cure, but I went to somewhere where there was a beach just so I could relax. But then I went back, I like it. I can't help it. It's just, as I mentioned before about being a musician, it's who I am. So if I wasn't doing that, I'm a writer at Seagull in Nashville, and if I wasn't doing that, I'd be writing. And that's my job and my hobby and my love and all that stuff rolled into one. I think if I was in a golf course, all I would be thinking about as I was doing whatever golfers do was, the recording the next day. I couldn't keep my mind off it because I don't want to keep my mind off it because I love it.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Do you just hear music in your head all day?
I do. I'm a little bit crazy in that regard, but we are all that way. If you're a musician right now, you're nodding your head up and down. We all do that. It just comes into our head and it won't go away, and it's not us being crazy. It's just us being creative.
What is your favorite project that you've ever worked on? And do you ever get starstruck? Have you ever been?
Great question. Those are two very separate questions. I loved working on the SSX series for years. The music was fun. It was interactive. We would take stems from bands, and it was the first time I ever worked with interactive music. So we'd license a song from, I don't know, Kaiser Chiefs or wherever the case may be, and you'd go to the left off the slope, and the music would break down, and you go to the right. I just thought it was so cool how we could, mess with the music in the most respectful way, and the artists all loved it. That it became like an interactive mix, as you're, and I think the type of music that we selected back then was spot on. I think it really created a sound for snowboarding and skiing. Yes, I've had two starstruck moments in my life and one that I refuse to have. I spent a day with Michael Jackson before the crap went down, so to speak, and he literally at his house in Neverland Ranch, and he spent a day pitching me on ideas for a game and showing me in his theater different visuals that he had worked on. And I'm like, well, I've seen Thriller, but he acted like nobody ever saw it before. It was amazing to go into his world. And he was, frankly, I don't care what anybody thinks, he was very kind, very humble, very creative, started quoting things, looked at me, and I say this with humility, trust me, but he looked at me and said, he was talking about NBA Live 2003 or 4 and said, oh my God, I'm such a fan of yours. And I almost died because I'm like, you're freaking Michael Jackson. What are you talking about?
You're a fan of me.
And then the person I refused to meet in my life, and I've had a bunch of opportunities, this goes back to being a Jersey guy, is Springsteen. I have stood 10 feet from Springsteen. I was friends with Clarence before he died. And Clarence used to say to me, come on, let me introduce you to Bruce. And I'm like, I can't. I don't want to. He still needs to be my childhood hero, even though I hear he's the nicest guy in the world and will live up to everything I imagine. I just want that rock star in my life where he's untouchable. And the only other one happened 2 days ago. I actually sat for several hours with Dolly Parton.
I saw that.
Wow,
Oh my God. And I literally, I wanted to say to her, and I never would, and here I am saying in public, like, I don't want you to be my girlfriend. I want you to be my mom, because I literally want to like cuddle with you. I'm in love with her. She's the greatest human being on the planet. And I told somebody earlier today that you could have people who otherwise around the world hate each other, are supposed to hate each other, Palestinians and Israelis, and yet they all love Dolly Parton. She's known and loved everywhere around the world. She was kind, warm, smart. And I had a meeting with her the other day, and I tried to make her laugh, and I achieved it because she did. She laughed and came over and gave me a hug after, and I can't believe it. I'm staring at the picture. I was starstruck. Yes, yeah. I was starstruck, and I can't think of anybody maybe other than Oprah that is known that well by everybody, young, old, gay, straight, black, white, Republican, Democrat. Everybody loves her. So I think that's pretty rare, So, yeah, it happened literally 2 days ago.
Yeah, I saw. I was jealous.
I saw Steel Magnolias, and I really like that movie.
God, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And it's going to continue because I'm going to see her again soon. So, I don't know.
Is she going to be on any games coming up?
I'm not talking about that, but we're always talking about unique opportunities together, and hopefully she'll be involved. Next generation. She recognizes it,
And the passion that you have with Liverpool, let's explain that a little bit, and how the MLS team became in Nashville.
Yeah.
And the merging the two, I guess.
Great question for me personally, because I keep talking about I'm a football fanatic, which I am. Although go Titans, different football, but go Titans. Liverpool. I guess, not growing up with soccer, you don't naturally have a team, so you have to, at some point, once you fall in love with the sport, and FIFA, the game, listen, I'm not 20, but I have to admit the actual game of FIFA is what helped me get to know and fall in love with the sport itself. And I had to pick a team. And at some point, you have to pick a team. And I go to the UK a lot. So I went to see Arsenal games, went to see Chelsea, this and that. And a friend of mine, Sat Bisla, who works in the music business in LA, is from Liverpool. And I don't know. I think we just watched we watched a match one day, and I fell in love. And then I call it God at work. And because all of a sudden, my dear, dear friend Peter Moore, who used to be the COO of EA, born and raised in Liverpool, called me a couple of years ago and said, I just got offered the CEO of Liverpool, and I'm moving back home. And I had tears in my eyes for him. I was so happy for him. And then within the next year, he introduced me to the former CEO, Ian Ayres, and all of a sudden Ian tells me he's coming to be the CEO of Nashville SC. So somehow I believe that Liverpool is God-given team to me. It just doesn't, it revolves in my life. I proudly go to some of those Nashville, Liverpool fan watch. We go to down in Donaldson Pike on Sundays or Saturdays and watch the game together. I don't understand drinking at 7 or 8 a.m., but it is what it is. But I'm fanatical. I've been over there a bunch of times. I've seen a bunch of Liverpool games. I watch them religiously. That is the thing that takes my mind off, by the way, what I do. I will religiously watch those matches every week, or more so for Champions League games. I'm very proud, changing a little bit here on what's happened with Nashville and the MLS. I've been heavily involved with the MLS for years. I just helped them have the theme written for the launch of the 25th year anniversary, which will debut with the first match on February 29th, one being here in Nashville. And then I was involved on the advisory committee, helping to bring an expansion team to Nashville. We just had the theme song written. I had the theme song written last summer, and we've been working on it for 6, 7, 8 months. And I'm really proud that, ironically, today we launched the theme. I had Judah and the Lion write the theme for Nashville SC, and I expect 30, 40,000 fans for the next 10, 20 years to be singing this incredible love song between team and fan. So I'm pretty heavily involved. And it all stems from, frankly, the game of FIFA. I fell in love with the sport. The sport took me over, so to speak. And musically, I'm very, very deeply involved with the league itself on how to set the tone for the teams, and the themes for the teams. And I'm going to have a horrible 2 days this coming season because I'm a big LAFC fan, and all of a sudden now I'm big Nashville, because I live here, SC fan, and I've been involved, and there's 2 matches this season. Why did they put Nashville SC in the Western Conference? I don't know. I was hoping they could stay away from each other. What am I going to do? The MLS did tell me that I'm going to hold them to it. They're going to make me a kit which is literally down the middle. Half is Nashville SC, half is LAFC, and I'm going to look completely schizophrenic on those 2 days.
I love that.
That's amazing. And I guess would that come through with the games as well if there was an MLS game?
Of course. Well, MLS are a part of FIFA.
Yep, sorry.
You can play those games in FIFA. So you'll be listening to the theme that'll debut next week for MLS, and you'll also hear the Nashville theme in FIFA. Probably not attached to Nashville, just in general in the menus next year, but they do say gold and the blue in it, so we'll kind of know what they're talking about.
I bet when you were playing your games for the first time, it's just that connect with the music that you've produced on the game, and maybe even when you go to a friend's house or something and they play a game or something like that, and you're like, wow, I did that. I guess that would be starstruck for me, just like figuring out that.
I think it does make me proud. But I think what makes me prouder is when I run into somebody, which is often, who tells me that a song they discovered in a game, or a piece or a cue or a piece of music that they heard in a game, changed them. That they discovered this band, or they discovered this score or that score in a game. Because when you do a lot of this stuff, you're isolated. And you don't know immediately the effect it has on people. And I'm not meaning to turn this to a joke, but if I had a dime, as the cliche goes, for every time I've gone to London or Germany or Sweden, and you go up to the border patrol or whatever they're called, and they stamp your passport and they go, what are you here for? What do you do? And I say, I work for EA, and they go, what do you do? And I say, I run music. You have no idea how many times I've had the guy go, oh my God, did you do the music for FIFA 9? Or, oh my God, and believe me, they stamp me real fast. But that type of love and fanaticism just is phenomenal to me. When you hear from gamers how much it's meant to them and how much they rely on it for the year ahead. Otherwise, I'm sitting in a studio and not feeling that connection. So that connection... Listen, bands have this, right? You have a connection to your fans. We actually can have a connection to our fans regularly. We hear from them. We hear from them. Telemetry itself tells us all the time what people are listening to, what they're not listening to. So I know what works and doesn't work. But when I hear it directly from somebody, man, it's everything. It's just everything.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. And just wrapping up here, we want to thank you so much for your time. And
my pleasure.
All of this was just amazing to hear.
Hopefully this lived up to your name, Killer.
It was absolutely killer. Yes.
Sounds like yours.
We do have a question that we ask every guest on our show, and that is, what is your morning ritual? I know you travel a lot, so you might not have one, but when you do get a chance to have one, what would that look like?
My morning ritual is really weird, okay? And sadly, because I travel so much, I can't keep it all the time. It's boring and it's very healthy, and now I'm going to lose everybody, okay? Number one, I'm a vegan, right? And I'm also very health conscious. So I get up in the morning. God, this can't be that interesting to anybody. I do, it's a lot. I do a glass of baking soda, and then I do a glass of lemon juice, warm lemon juice, and then I make celery juice in a juicer, right? And then, sorry, now I'm going to sound like a combination of a yogi and
Brentwood Mom.
Probably. And then I always try to meditate, right, for a little bit, because that takes my mind off things because it's so crazy during the day. And then I make a very gross shake every morning of organic bananas and blueberries and barley juice. And it's really gross, but sorry. And then I work out because I have a Peloton and I love that thing, right?
Awesome.
But it's tough to be a music person because I criticize the music selections, you know what I mean? And what else do I do? And listen, what I do mostly is between that, I have the world's greatest dog, and I just hang out with her. I'm very proud of her. She is a service dog. I just spent months in Nashville, like training her so she can go to hospitals and stuff like that. So I like to hang. She calms the hell out of me. I take her to studios with me. She has her own chair at Ocean Way in Nashville. So that's my morning. The advantage of living in Nashville and working in LA is that by the time I'm done with all of that, it's not even 8 a.m. in Los Angeles. So I have to work sort of, I can work 2 days, so to speak. But I'm sorry if that wasn't as interesting as other people. Maybe other people say I don't know, what do they say? What are other people's answers?
That's pretty spot on to everybody else, except you juice a little bit more.
I do. I believe in that.
Do you do caffeine?
No. You
Not
know
at all?
why? Because
Why?
I am so high strung and so type A. The caffeine is, I don't want to say it, but it
you
is
on
like
another level.
drugs to me. I mean, it's horrible. And I will drink coffee because I love it. But when I drink a cup of coffee, get out of my way. I swear to God, all the folks that work for me, I'm sure they run away because we got to do this. We got to do that. Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? I'm nuts.
Right. I'm trying to take it away from my life as well, slowly.
Yeah. The juicing is key. I'm all about it. Organic juicing. It does change your life.
And then the meditation. How long do you meditate for? I'm trying to get more into that as well.
You should look at Insight Timer, one of those great
I have
apps.
that one. Yeah, it's free. It's great.
I try to do 15 to 20 minutes in the morning. 20 would be ideal. And then at night, I always try. I did it last night. I put a Yoga Nidra app on, and I never finish it. It's 20, 30 minutes
You
long.
fall asleep before? I do
I'm
the
gone
same.
in 5 minutes.
Yep.
Fantastic.
And a weighted blanket. With that, you're gone.
I have a weighted blanket as
Me
well.
too.
It's amazing.
I love it.
Totally
Amazon.
true. I totally agree. I think I got mine too heavy though. Mine is like 20 pounds.
Mine's
it's like
20 pounds.
Oh, really? Doesn't
Yeah.
it feel like a human being is laying on top of
Yeah.
you? To me,
Yeah.
sometimes it's too much. You know. But anyway, that's my morning ritual. It's healthier than hopefully many, but
great.
it's not Starbucks.
And that's why you're thriving, because you're...
That's why that's why I have the energy I have. I'll tell you that much. You know.
I guess
There you
you
go.
need the energy to do what you're doing as well.
You do. That's why no caffeine.
Yeah.
If you enjoyed this episode of Killer Influence, please leave any questions or reviews on iTunes and follow us on Twitter at Podcast Killer or at Killer Influence Podcast on Instagram. Until next time.